Hey everyone, it's Arthur Cade, and welcome back to episode 4 of Inspector Claim Talk with the preeminent home inspection litigation attorney, the best in the business, Joe Denneler. Joe, we have an awesome array of topics today. We're covering pretty much the gamut about what home inspectors need to know about purchasing insurance. So I'm going to throw the ball to you with question 1. Why should you even get insurance if your state doesn't require it?
Because the problem becomes kind of like a lawyer. The only time you really need and appreciate insurance is when you really need insurance. And in our experience, now I've been litigating home inspection cases for 20 years and consulting with all the carriers before we built Elite Re, our carrier that's partnered with Internachi, where we created this home inspection insurance program just for home inspectors with E&O and GL. And what we've come to learn, based on our sample sizes, which are pretty big, is that it's more likely than not that as an inspector, you're going to get a claim. And a claim event isn't as simple as, well, I didn't do anything wrong. I'll write a letter to the judge in this lawsuit and I'll get out of it. You need to have people behind you and insurance behind you that will back you up, that will pay your defense costs. And if you do get hit for a judgment, because, I'm going to tell you, courts sometimes get it wrong. And if you do get hit with a judgment, you're going to want that insurance in place to take care of you. And quite honestly, when you weigh the damage that can be done by a lawsuit to your business versus the cost of insurance, it's almost a no-brainer. And so even though your state might not require it, you definitely need it in your line of work, because the way we see it, you're more likely than not to have at least 1 to 2 claims during your career. And it might not even be a situation where you have to pay a claim, but you're going to need that defense, or you're going to need somebody in your corner who knows how to tell people that they don't have a claim. And that's what's unique about our program, because we do incident versus claim reporting. We call it worry-free reporting. And what it really means is that you can tell us anything. If you have an incident happen where somebody says, we think you did something wrong, we're there to help you with it. And we'll take every effort we can to make it go away without anybody paying anybody money. But if you don't have that in your corner, and you're left to your own devices to defend these things, you're not experienced in that. So why not have people who do this on a daily basis for decades help you out with that situation?
What if your state only requires general liability insurance? Is that enough? Should home inspectors just get that?
It's really not for your line of work. And understand that as a home inspector, you're a professional, and in some cases a licensed professional, depending on what state you're in, but you're a professional. Professional liability is a little bit different than regular general liability or what we used to call property and casualty liability. Professional liability is the response you have to make to an allegation that you did your job wrong, and as a result, it damaged somebody. So in the usual claim, it's going to be a buyer saying the inspector didn't tell me about this roof leak problem, and as a result, I bought a house with this roof leak, and now I need to spend $30,000 on the roof. And I could have negotiated with the seller on this if you had told me about it. So that's the usual claim we get. And general liability insurance would not cover that claim. That would require errors and omissions coverage, which protects you from claims that you were professionally negligent. So just like other professionals, just like me as an attorney, like your doctor, like your dentist, like your accountant, you're a professional. And so you need errors and omissions coverage to cover you when somebody claims you made an error or an omission in performing your professional services. General liability only covers an accident. So if you're in somebody else's house doing inspection and you break a vase, general liability will respond to that. If you overrun the tub or the sink and walk out of the room and it floods the house, that's general liability, but that's not errors and omissions. So if you only have general liability and somebody sues you and says, you did my inspection negligently, and as a result, I suffered damages, you're not going to have coverage under that general liability policy.
So you've touched on this now, but what are the main differences between E&O and general liability insurance?
Sure. There's a couple major differences. The first major difference is usually the general liability policy has a much lower deductible of like $250 in our program, where an E&O policy, we have deductibles anywhere from $1,500 all the way to $25,000 or $50,000 for some of our bigger clients. So that's the first difference. But the real main difference is in what it covers and what it doesn't. And as I explained, without that errors and omissions coverage, that general liability coverage is only going to cover you if you break something or if you damage somebody's property, but it's not going to cover you when you get sued. And so what we see with a lot of inspectors, unfortunately, is, they do what the state tells them they have to do, not what might be a prudent business decision to do. And so they end up either getting no coverage or buying general liability. And they're usually shocked to learn when they do get sued by a client that policy is not going to respond for them and cover them in this situation. That's really the major difference. The other difference is the E&O policy generally offers an ancillary coverage component to it, which I think we'll talk about a little bit here, but those aren't covered by general liability either.
How does a home inspector protect themselves from claims that are related to other services that they may offer?
And that's the ancillary coverage. And basically what it means is, if you're doing home inspections, you definitely need home inspector E&O and general liability, no doubt, because like I said, you're going to need it at some point in your career. The law of averages requires it. But the ancillary services are a little bit different. And a lot of inspectors don't realize that they're not covered for those services. Now, with our underwriting team, our people know exactly what they're being covered for and what they're not. We take great pains to make sure they do that. But with regard to the ancillary services, they're usually covered under that E&O policy as an endorsement. And so, for example, in our company, we offer ancillary coverage for wood destroying insect inspections, radon, sewer scopes, oil tank sweeps, mold, all those things that are add-ons. Now, if you're in business and you're trying to make the most money you can and you're offering all these different services, well, you need that coverage for them too. Now, in our policy, a lot of those coverages don't even cost you any extra money. But you need to have those coverage in place. So it's not enough to just have the home inspector E&O. If you're going to do radon testing, you need to have that endorsement there that's going to cover you for that event. Or mold, for example, is a big ticket item. And in our company, if you didn't go out there and agree to inspect for mold, and somebody says, you should have told us about the mold, well, we're going to cover you with a defense under your E&O. But if you're actually out there doing mold inspections or indoor air quality inspections and you don't have that coverage, well, then you don't have coverage for that claim. And so it's really important as an inspector, if you're offering any other ancillary service whatsoever, that you have the appropriate coverage for that. And like I said, in our program, there's not really much there to do. We're there to tell you what you need and help you get it as cheaply and quickly as possible.
Look, ultimately, people don't think about insurance until they need it. And I can imagine a home inspector saying, you know what, Joe, I've never had a claim. Why do I even need insurance? How do you answer that?
Because you're going to have one. And I'm not saying that to threaten you or to suggest that you don't know your business. You'll know your business way better than any of us ever could. But I know insurance and I know claims. And I've done this for decades now. And I'm here to tell you that the chances that you as a home inspector will have a claim are very high, at least one during your career. And the unfortunate thing about that is that one claim could bankrupt your business. The average cost to defend one of these cases, just defend it. Let's assume you get sued and you're right and you didn't do anything wrong. The average cost in the US just for us to defend you in that litigation matter before we even get to a trial is about $25,000. Now you tack on another 25 to 30 to do the trial. And you add up all the days that you're tied up with that case, not making any money. And then let's say you have a judgment entered against you. Maybe a jury or a judge gets it wrong. Now you've got that $50,000 anchor on you, and plus whatever has to be paid out. I don't know many average inspection companies that could afford that kind of a financial hit. And when you're a mom and pop operation, where you don't eat if you don't make money, that can be devastating. And why have that hanging over your head? Why have that risk out there if you can avoid it simply and cheaply? I'm going to tell you right now that these claims can break a business. And it's important that not only do you have the coverage, but you have the right people providing you the coverage and the right people behind you. Litigating these cases, defending inspectors for a long time, and everybody on our team has been involved in this just for inspectors for a very long time. And we're here to help you, and we're here to protect you from those events. But we can't help you if you don't have the insurance. So, and even if you don't buy it from us, get it.
Do you find that there's a generational gap in terms of the desire to get insurance? So for instance, if someone is a multi-generational home inspector who is like, look, I've been doing this for a long time. haven't really needed it, versus someone who's a younger generation and understands the importance of insurance. Are those two different types of conversations sometimes?
They are. And for the newer inspector, obviously they haven't had too much experience, dealing with people who might be unhappy about their work. Right. And they may have that from another life. A lot of people come to home inspection after another career, for example, and maybe they have some experience how to deal with that, but generally they don't. And so for them, it's important that we're there in their corner as they get started and get rolling, to insulate them or to help them and help them, navigate this process of insulating them from risk. The inspectors who have been doing it for a long time, and I hear all kinds of combinations. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never had to settle anything. I just tell people to pound sand, or, all the assets are in my spouse's name, or, I have 5 different LLCs and 2 partnerships set up in 5 different continents, and therefore nobody can catch me. I've heard it all. And I'm here to tell you that none of that stuff's going to help you when you get sued. None of it. And you're not bulletproof, and you're not fully insulated.
Is it state specific at all? So do different states act differently?
Yeah, definitely. And not just in terms of the liability that the inspector might incur on a state-by-state basis, but the requirements for insurance. And so, for example, you can look at states that are right next to each other. So, I live in Pennsylvania. New Jersey requires inspectors to have a $500,000 minimum errors and omissions coverage in order to have their license. Pennsylvania, an insurance or an inspector only has to carry $100,000 in E&O. And that's a big, big difference. Some states don't require it at all. Some states like Ohio only require general liability and no errors and omissions insurance. And so it does vary from state to state, but so does the risk. And what we found is, there are states that are much more litigious, certainly. I could throw a couple out there. New Jersey, California, Texas, and Tennessee are the states where we see the most claims and incidents. But, the beauty of our program is those incidents don't go on your loss run. So we invite everybody to report everything to us. We look at everything. We will help you resolve it. If it's something you think you need to settle within your deductible, we'll help you do that and give you a very solid release document that prevents people from talking about the claim or publishing things about it. But if you don't have that incident versus claim operation going on, and your fear is that, I'm gonna report something that's going to cause my premiums to go up, we're here to tell you that doesn't necessarily always have to happen either. And it really depends on the state a lot, that has, in terms of what you're charged for the insurance. Absolutely.
Ultimately, and I know it's on a case-by-case basis, and our trust is that judges are always going to be non-judgmental, non-subjective, but in fact objective. But do you find that in your experience, do judges seem to sympathize more with the home buyer or seller versus the home inspector? Is there just kind of like an innate gravitation towards that end of the spectrum?
There is. And because, understand that judges, jurors, arbitrators, whoever you're presenting your case to, they're human beings too. Now, the one thing about home inspection claims is there's not, it's not like a bodily injury case where somebody comes into court on crutches with a neck brace and their life is ruined. And, that's a very easy sympathetic moment, for a judge or a jury. But with home inspection, it's a little bit different. But yeah, I can tell you in my career, I've definitely seen judges give more deference to, Bobby and Susie home buyer with an infant and a toddler buying their first home on a limited budget. Oh yeah. Yeah, they're definitely going to generate some sympathy, because a lot of people have been in their shoes, being young and with children, and something's wrong and you don't know if you have the money to fix it. Yeah, that resonates with people. And so, our attorneys that we use on these cases, we have a panel of attorneys all over the country that I supervise all that work, because I did mostly only home inspection for 20 years, and nobody's really ever done that in litigation before. And so I supervise them, but our attorneys are, we help them to deal with that issue by, you can't go in and attack people. You have to go in there and present the case of the professional home inspector with an air of certainty, and also, to diffuse that sympathy situation, because whether or not there's sympathy, there's still fact, and whether or not somebody made an error or didn't, that's something we can prove. But to get around that sympathy is difficult. And so, as that relates to insurance, you could have a situation, like I said, where you're right, but for whatever reason, the jury or the judge or the arbitrator doesn't agree with that. And I'm going to tell you, if you really knew what jurors thought about, you wouldn't want to go to court that often unless you really think you're going to win, because I've seen jurors make decisions based on the color of somebody's tie, and especially if it's a long trial. And so again, with the insurance, if something goes wrong in the judicial system, that insurance is going to be there to indemnify you for that error too, and so you can't guarantee, you can't always depend on people doing the right thing. You really can't in this world. And at least with the insurance, even if you get tagged, it's not your money coming out of your bank account or your business assets being sold to pay it.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable investment. As always, great stuff, Joe. Have a great Labor Day. Every home inspector, I say this every episode, should be getting insurance, man. This is like it's an automatic. It should be an automatic for home inspectors.
It really should.
Have a great Labor Day, Joe, and I'll see you on episode 5.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care, man.